Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Dr. Carmen Bryan and this is Car Chronicles. How you guys doing? You doing all right? All right, let's do this. Hopefully you guys will be showing up in Atlanta so we can talk about trauma and how to recover from trauma and breaking generational trauma. But check this out. Do you know how much trauma affects your neurological system or your nervous system? And do you know what all your nervous system entails? And I want you to make sure you come to the conference because I'm going to go in detail with this. But do you know what all your nervous system entails and how trauma affects the nervous system? Well, since you asked, I'm going to tell you. There are 3 parts to your nervous system: brain, spinal cord, nerves. Helps you move, think, feel. Your nervous system is responsible for memory, learning, intelligence. Did I say movement, memory, and also basic body functions like breathing and heartbeat? Your nervous system is so important that it is the hub. It is the control center, the regulatory center. The nervous system, communication center throughout your entire body. Without your nervous system, you can't tell when someone has touched you. Your body cannot regulate itself. Like when it gets hot, you start sweating so the body can cool itself back down. Or when it gets cold, you start to shiver. If you didn't have all that, you couldn't smell, you couldn't taste. You'd have problems with your emotions, your feelings. Think about what I'm saying. Thinking, reading, remembering, and feeling emotions, that's how relevant the nervous system is. A lot of parents in the past did not have this type of information. So when I make this statement, don't feel guilty, because some of this information, it wasn't that it may not have been available. It's just that we didn't know where to look for it. And our parents didn't know where to look for it, or they didn't have this information. Someone wasn't giving them information like this. But do you know that when a child is traumatized in their youth or experience a traumatic event, that trauma does not resolve by itself, and it has a major impact on the nervous system? And a lot of times growing up, parents shake it off, or sometimes that trauma goes unresolved or unnoticed. And so that child or you shake it off, and we're just going to live life. We're going to go what sexual trauma, abuse, neglect, all that kind of trauma, or witnessing things. A lot of time PTSD doesn't come. Sometimes it comes from experiencing the trauma directly, and sometimes it comes from experiencing trauma secondary, watching you go through trauma. Your children watching you go through trauma, or you have watched your parents or your mother or your father go through trauma or abuse, and you've been traumatized. And so your nervous system has been affected as a child. And trauma does not resolve itself, and it has long-term effects. And even into adulthood, that trauma from the past still is in your system. That's why you remember the book and remember the teachings about the body keeps score. Well, your nervous system is holding on to that information, and that trauma can be in your system for decades. Not just when you met the narcissist, but you've already had trauma in your system from decades, and they're just compiling on top of that. So it's like impacting it, putting more trauma on top of it. Your neurological system is being affected. Why do you think so many of you have immune issues? There we go. I said it right. I said that word right there. You have neurological issues. You have, the same thing like diabetics. They have a lot of neuropathy, but the neuropathy, you can get neuropathy from trauma. The stress of these events can cause a dysfunction in brain development, and how a person or a child, when you get older, responds to stress. The autonomic nervous system is affected, and this is our survival mode, how we respond, or our behaviors or emotional responses to let's say, your fight or flight, or your responses to danger. It has been now affected. It's like the switch is left on, and so you're constantly in survival mode. And people who have been affected, especially in your youth, with trauma, and your nervous system has been affected, have a high level of psychiatric issues, higher level of neurological problems. So now your body is stuck on the on switch and is overproducing adrenaline and cortisol. So some of you guys that have the fat belly, some of you guys shouldn't, unless you have a bunch of kids or you have some kids and your body is just that way, a lot of you have these pouches, but that this is not normal. It doesn't look normal. It doesn't even feel normal. You just got a big belly, men and women alike, but it's an overproduction of cortisol, and some of you guys, this is your body's response to trauma and stress and the overproduction of adrenaline in your body. You're constantly stuck in this fight or flight mode. Fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. So some of you guys, you try to avoid issues because your system is dysregulated. Some of you guys go head first and want to fight. You're always fighting, always fighting. Some of you guys want to run. Some of you guys freeze. So you guys know that a lot of times when you have been in these situations, you can't understand. My brain freezes. I can't even think. I don't even have a response at that time. It's like I'm freezing because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to respond. Some of you guys just fight, always fighting. Good morning, how you doing? What's so good about this morning? People are like clutching their pearls, like, what's wrong with you? But you're stuck in that mode. And I'm not saying everybody is stuck in the exact same mode, because each one of you may be stuck in different modes and you don't understand why. And some studies have showed there's something called the HPA axis dysregulation, which is a biological link that there's a belief that is also linked to mental health issues such as major depression, anxiety. Obviously, we know anxiety and schizophrenia. And think about those people that are struggling with addictions, substance abuse addictions, substance abuse, alcoholism, smoking, addictions, shopping, or anything else, but these addictions that affect your body. Trauma can cause a dysregulation in your nervous system where you have a hard time regulating your emotions and your behaviors. That's how important the nervous system is, where trauma is so highly. And see, a lot of people, you're 100 years old, and you're wondering, why have I not healed? Why have I not? Because it's in your nervous system, and people ask, how long will it take for me to heal from this trauma? Well, number one, each person is different. And if you think for a minute, there are some people that have went through severe trauma as a child. And right now, it's almost like the tip of the iceberg. You have gotten with a narcissist and you're looking at this last experience with this narcissist, or the narcissists that have been in your life. But you can look back in your childhood and all this trauma, but the last thing that you really focus on is the last relationship or situationship that you were in. But in actuality, your nervous system has already been damaged in childhood. And so you can't really say, some people it takes weeks, some people it takes months, some people it's going to take years, especially if you've been in a situation 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, some people 50, 60 years. Your nervous system is shot. I'm not saying it can't be fixed, but it is shot. And so don't rush the process of healing, because your health matters. Trauma has changed the structure of your brain, believe it or not. When you're talking about brain damage, trauma can affect the prefrontal cortex, which also affects your executive functioning. So you guys go check out what executive functioning is, but it affects the executive functioning. So think about it. You're also always in reactive mode. And so there's some people, you're proactive, and there's some people that are reactive. Now, you're in fight, flight, or freeze. You're in fight mode all the time. You're constantly heightened. Your adrenaline is pumping, but you're constantly in that fight mode. You're constantly in the survival mode. So you have a hard time connecting with people because you're suspicious of everybody, or, things may remind you or trigger you. So you're constantly in survival mode. You have a hard time relaxing. A lot of you have a hard time sleeping. You get into areas, think about it. I don't like to sit anywhere, where my back is against the door. Or, I get around these type of people, and these type of people kind of make me nervous. I don't like being around crowds or people. Some of you have gotten agoraphobia. You don't even want to be in public around people. You get nervous, panic attacks. All these things that are affecting you as an adult. And when you go to therapy, the therapist normally asks you, can you remember, when this started? Some of you will say, I can't remember. I've been like this all my life. I've been like this since childhood. And then you ask questions like, well, what happened in childhood? Is there anything specific that happened in childhood that may have brought an onset? Some of you actually have not just dissociation, but there's this mild amnesia that you have, where your brain has blocked the situation or the traumatic event. The dissociation part has dissociated you, so you don't even really know the details. That's a part of the questionnaire whenever I'm doing PTSD assessments. Like, can you remember the details of the event? Some people cannot remember the details of the event of trauma. This is why I want you to make sure that you come and see us in Atlanta, Georgia on the 27th of July so that we can educate you about the trauma, how it affects you, and how